Hey, welcome back to our Thrive podcast. I got my good friend Lance here today, and we're just laughing before the cameras turned on. Lance just got out of prison, a week ago?
Oh, 8 days, actually 9 daes and 42 hours and 13 minutes. Who's counting?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So federal prison, he just spent a year and a half in the federal penitentiary in Arkansas.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And the reason he was there is because he was wearing a Gator sweatshirt.
not even close. Not even close. But yeah, the whole reason I was there was impersonating a U.S. Marshal.
So the charge was impersonating a U.S. Marshal.
Government official.
A government official.
Yeah, to impress a woman.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I know some politicians who are impersonating who are government officials, right? Anyway, but we were laughing beforehand here. We were going to call this podcast "It's Better Than Being in Prison," right?
So it's better than being in prison.
or being on this podcast is better than being in prison. So Lance texted me the other day and he says, "I'm out. I'm home." Yeah. And but Lance was at Next Step. I think we were just talking. You got there in 2022.
Yes. Yeah.
And
November of 2022.
Yeah, you were there with Mo.
Yes, Mozell Wright.
Yeah, Mozell Wright was there when you were there, and you knew Mo. Did you know Mo?
Yeah, and actually, I talked to Mo the other night. I called him. His cell phone still works, and he got a job at Anchor Glass.
Yeah,
I knew. Really good.
Yeah, I knew he was working at Anchor. Yeah, so good for him. But so you were at Next Step, and you were there for several. Well, mainly because your probation officer said you had to be there.
Well, that's the whole thing is I had to be there, but at the same time, if you don't look at it as a beneficial thing to do, it's really hard to do anything that you don't really want to do. Yeah. So it's just, and Chris in steps that he says, this is what you need to do. You got no choice. So either, get with it or you don't. And then it ends up being a good thing. So
yeah, even if at first you're kind of like, I don't want to be here. But if you just say, okay, you know what, I'm here. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this. And the next thing you know, it's beneficial to you.
And I don't think anybody's ever said, what, Next Step was the worst thing I've ever done in my life. Nobody ever says that.
They probably say, somebody say it's the hardest thing they've ever done in their life, or one of the hardest.
Well, that includes, having to do some discipline. If you don't get disciplined in anything you do in life, you never succeed in it at all.
Right.
So it's 100%.
Yeah, boundaries, right? Rules. A lot of people don't like rules. A lot of people say, well, freedom is not living by rules. No, that leads to chaos. Yeah, it might be freedom at first, but rules and boundaries provide a structure in which we can succeed. You think about, you're wearing your Gators.
No, goodness gracious.
But you think about football, right? There's no football game without rules and boundaries.
That's right.
So when you take away the rules and the boundaries of football, and you have chaos, and NFL players and even college players can make lots of money because there's rules and boundaries, and they learn how to play well within the rules and the boundaries. Well, God's the same way. God says, I have rules and boundaries for you, for your protection and for your success. Yeah. You learn how to play well within those boundaries, and you can be very successful.
Yeah, and something I never got until I got the Next Step is the structure. If you don't have any kind of structure, which some structure is good, and at Next Step it's a good structure because you don't really have a lot of downtime. They say that, an absent mind is the devil's playground. And when you and Chris don't make it any time to have nothing but God and church and peanuts, then it makes...
cutting firewood.
And cutting firewood. Oh, I forgot about that. But cutting firewood...
How can you forget about cutting firewood?
It makes it a well time to be there. And the hardest thing for me is getting out of prison, thinking to myself, all right, I've lost my job, I lost my house, I lost my sister, my family because my mom died.
While you're in prison. So while you're in prison, let's back up. So while you're in prison, you lost your house.
Yep.
You lost your mom.
Yes.
You lost your job.
Yes. And it went out of business.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and it went out. You sound like a country song, right? You lost your dog, man. But you really and while you're there, you lost your mom, but they didn't let you out of prison.
No, they didn't.
To go to your funeral?
I would have an unwilling amount of money to pay the marshals to take me to all it here, but the whole thing is going through that and learning and losing all that stuff and really reading Job about how he's lost everything and still stayed, having God, knowing God's going to do something great. You got to trust in Him. For a long time, everybody says, well, I trust you, God. I put everything in your hands and I'm going to do this way and you're going to be empowered of it. But it's not, because we say that, but we really don't do it. Yeah. And this time in prison, I really did it. I really said, God, this is you. Get me out of here as soon as you can. Let it be God willing. Let me learn some of the things that I need to learn to to better do my life, just be with me and actually give it to him this time instead of not and just saying I do it.
Yeah.
You get it?
Yeah. We can talk a lot about giving things to God, but when the rubber meets the road, do we really do that?
It's like I was telling you earlier, something that I really did is when I first got to prison, I was mad. I was like, God, how dare you? How dare you put me in prison? How dare you do this? And I actually had a revelation with God. God said, how dare me? How dare you? I make this thing easy for you. You accept a gift that's free, by the way. Salvation is free. Yeah. Do the right thing and just be disciplined, and everything else will fall into place. And what do? We never do it. We never do it.
We do things our way, right?
Yeah, exactly,
right.
Exactly.
I was this morning. I was reading in my Bible. I was going back to the book of Genesis chapter 11. I'm just being general here, right? Yeah. Genesis chapter 11 is about man's plans. Mm-hmm. It's about man building a tower to have, Nimrod and all those people, and those plans fall apart. Right. And then when we move to chapter 12 in Genesis, it's about Abraham and God's plans. Yeah. Right. So, and it's a huge comparison from chapter 11 in Genesis to chapter 12, from man's plans that don't work to God's plans, which do work. Yeah. And which one am I going to follow? Am I going to follow God's plans, or am I going to follow man's plans? And my plans never work out.
That's right. And that's why I was saying you really got to trust it. If you really never trust anything, it's never going to work. Yeah. You've got to be 100% in, going all in like a poker game. You've got to be all in and give it everything you got. If not, you're going to fall short 100% of the time.
So tell me, I know I went to court with you when your trial or when you went before the judge the first time there, and then the judge was a little irritated with the prosecution. Yeah. And he told everybody, come back in 3 weeks and we'll look at this again. But it was a little bit longer than that, I think. Yeah, and it was. And everything was going good. I was making a lot of money at work. He made me do finance. He let me do finance at the time, and I was making great money. But there's always that thing on my back of having something I gotta do. Yeah. And so when he finally come back to court, he said, you ain't learned your lesson. Yeah. I'm sorry to tell you, but you're not. And that was God's plan. It wasn't for me to pray to God to get me out of this and let me be scot-free, because right. It was for God to see you through it. Yeah, I would have done probably the same thing again. So a lot of times we're praying to God to get us out of something, and God wants us to walk. I know your phone's ringing there. That's all right. But instead of God getting us out of something, God wants us to go through something with Him. A whole different plan for us. Yeah, and we're always praying to God, please get me out of this. Please remove this situation. And God's going, no, I'm going to see you through this. That's right. So I'm going to see you through. So the judge gave you 2 years in federal prison. Right. You did a year and a half. Yeah, because I did also, it was the discipline. It was getting involved in the Christian Car, which is a group that you're in. It was praying every day, every Monday, Wednesday, and we did Bible studies on Tuesdays. And it felt more like home than anything, because it was doing what I do on a regular day, or a regular week. I come to church, I do what I'm supposed to do, and it made it a little easier. But at the same time, if I didn't trust in Him to actually get me home sooner, it would never happen. So it would have happened, but just with more time. But so, what was the reason for 6 months shaving off of your time there? Just good behavior? Good behavior, and because I did 500 hours of working for 49 cents an hour. Unicore is a great furniture company, but it's 49 cents an hour. Yeah. And then if you've been there for 10 years, it's like $1 an hour. So, but it was great retirement plan. Yeah. But you're working, overtime at 7 in the morning to 8 at night. Okay. So you're busy. So you're busy. You're busy. And it makes time go by really quick. But that's the way to do it, right? Yeah. It's the way to do it. So, so you get out, you're a year and a half in prison. You text me last week, say, hey, I'm home, right? I'm out of prison. And now you get home, like I said earlier, you get home and you don't have your home. You don't have a place to live. No. You do have your truck, right? You don't have a job. You've lost your mom. There's strain in your family, right? There's strained relationships right now in your family because of some things that have happened while you're in prison. And there's something that God's doing extra for me. Something's going to be good, because it would have been easy for me to come home and had everything given to me back. And not saying I'd have done the same thing, but I would not have appreciated the time in my relationship with Him if I hadn't still abiding in Him and trying to get Him to give me something great. Yeah. And doing the right stuff. So it's a never ending battle with life. Okay. So what are your challenges right now? Coming out of prison, right? Here you are, you're re-entering society. You're re-entering the world out of prison. What are the challenges? The challenge is a job, of course. And
stay in coming to church, stay doing the right stuff, and being able to for having you and Chris to depend on y'all to help me out to do things like, like we said earlier, I'm thinking about going back to the transition home because where I'm living at with my uncle it's not a good thing right now.
Yeah.
It's not what I need to be. It's not where I need to be. I'm always going to fall back into that everything's given to me type thing instead of me working for it.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping that I can get in a transition home and thrive and do the right things.
Yeah. So you need a job. So you need a place to live. You need a job.
Yeah.
Right. You got a vehicle. That's good. Most people coming out of prison don't have a job, don't have a place to live, and they don't have a vehicle. Right.
No money.
Right. The coming back into the world, and a lot of people would say, well, they committed the crime, right? These are the consequences, right? They've been to prison, now they don't have a job. Well, they're just gonna reoffend.
They're gonna redo the same stuff.
They're gonna reoffend. So it's not wise for us to sit here and say, hey, they brought this on themselves, right? When they got out of prison now and they don't have a job and they don't have a vehicle and they don't have a home and they've lost all, well, that's just what they deserve. Well, no, we're just setting them up for more, for the taxpayer to pay more dollars for this person to go back to prison. I think it's cheaper for us to say, how can we help?
Yeah.
How can we help Lance? How can you help the next guy or girl coming out of prison? How can you help them re-enter society to be successful and not sit here and go, well, that's what they deserve.
Well, because a lot of for the whole about 6 or 8 weeks of coming home, knowing I was fixed to come out, me losing everything and then knowing that I still have you and Chris and next step and the guys that have my back no matter what, it takes a lot of relief off my back where I'm not thinking I'm fixing to fail. I'm fixing to have everything I'm supposed to because I can still depend on.
There's no hopelessness.
There's no hopelessness. And it's something that I can get through and say, you know what, I made a mistake, but I'm not down and out completely. I'm not living on the streets.
Yeah.
That's something that's very important to me. And it means the world to me. Yeah. And, it's just.
Most men and women coming out of prison don't have
nothing. They got nobody.
They don't have somebody they can call and say, hey, I don't have a place to live. Can I move in for 6 months, a year, and get a job, and they don't have that.
No.
Right.
And it's like we said earlier, the guy with all the tattoos on his face.
Yeah.
It's hard for him to get out of prison, live with anybody. You got tattoos all over your face.
It's going to be hard to get a job.
Exactly.
It's going to be, I'm not trying to beat up people with tattoos. That's not you got tattoos, right? Yeah. And I'm not beating up people with tattoos, but the issue is that if you get those tattoos in places that are going to make it difficult for you to get a job, boy, you don't make things harder for yourself, right? You're not cool. I mean, you might think it is. You might think it's cool, but it's not cool because it's going to hurt you. It's going to harm you in the long run. I'm not against tattoos. I could care less about the tattoo.
I don't even think anybody would buy any peanuts from a guy that's got a bunch of tattoos on his face.
Yeah. We had a guy several years ago who had a bunch of tattoos on his face, right? That came through Next Step. And we were a little bit apprehensive to send him to some of our fundraising events because of the way he looked. Yeah. But you know what happened? He ended up being one of our best salesmen.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, wow. And it was funny. We were like, okay. But that's not the norm. That's not the norm, right? Again, make wise decisions when it comes to tattoos. I'm not saying don't get tattoos, right? But if you're going to get one, make wise decisions around getting a tattoo, where you get it, how visible is it. And
I remember talking to my cellmate. You spend a lot of time.
How do we get on tattoos?
I don't even know. Well, kind of going back to what I was saying is having somebody have my back. I got a guy I was in the cell with for almost a whole year, a nice guy, but he always asking me, "What are you going to do when you get out?"
Yeah.
And at first, instead of saying I've lost everything and I don't know what I'm gonna do, it was good to say I got somebody that's got my back. I can depend on somebody and it's not just Next Step. Right. It's people I've met at this church that when that first night I come in from jail, they was 30 people.
So you had a support system before you went to
way before. Yeah.
So this is one of the things I pound my fist on about reentry. Right. This whole reentry is that people who succeed have a support system, a solid support system before they go.
Before they ever go.
A lot of people are looking for that support system when they get out, right? They're trying to, and at that point, it's a whole lot tougher. If you have not been building a solid support system before you go.
Yeah. And like I said, when I come in that day or that night and saw a couple guys in Next Step that I remember, and then some of the members here were like, oh, like giving me hugs, and I was surprised. I was like,
they remember me.
Yeah, they did. They did. It's been 2 years, and they remember me. But it's just a lot of them that says, if I need anything, just please call me. And it's not just something that church people say.
Yeah.
I went to Second Baptist, and sometimes it's just the polite thing to say is, if you need anything, just call me. Yeah. Here, these people are for real about, hey, if you need some help, I got you. Like, you don't worry about it. So it's a good feeling.
Well, I'm glad, and you're right. It's been, and people here at church are always asking me about a Next Step guy that's graduated that they don't see anymore. Hey, what happened to so-and-so? Yeah. Hey, what happened to, where is so-and-so? And I've had people ask me about Lance, right? Hey, where's that guy with the real white teeth? And he was a Gators fan. Yeah. And usually I say, well, he before he came to Next Step, he had some charges he had to answer for.
You said that at my graduation.
Yeah. And then, so now he has to go back and finish that. And that's okay, right? That's okay. You have to, I remember we had a guy a while back, and the judge looked at him and said, Mr. Jones, I mandated you to Next Step for you, to help you with your addiction problem and to help you with these issues, right? He says, now that you're complete with Next Step, now you owe the people of Georgia time for the crime you committed. Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I can't argue with that. I kind of felt like his time at Next Step should have counted for his time. Yeah. But the judge said, no, that was for him. Mm-hmm. Now you owe the people of Georgia something. Yeah. And he could have sentenced this guy to another 10 years of prison. Oh, man. And all he got was about 15 months. Yeah. Yeah. And so was his time at Next Step, did it count for something? Yes. Yeah. Because he could have gave him another 10 years.
Yeah. And at first that judge was talking about, it's the one you didn't come to, but after that 21 days and he was fixing to sentence me. Right. He said, I'm thinking 5 years, man. And I was like,
it's a lifetime.
You're crazy. Like, please don't. And he said, because of Next Step and you doing what you're supposed to do, he's like, I'm going to cut that in half. I'm going to give you 2 years.
Well, good. Yeah.
And so I was thinking, it's hard to be thankful for going to prison for 2 years, but it's better than the alternative. And it could have been a lot worse.
I was in court one day. This is not with you, but with another guy. I was there and this is again the federal courthouse here in Macon, and I was there, and Judge Treadwell was on the stand, and anyway, I forget why I was even there, who I was there for, right? And then I left after everything was done, and I went down to, there's a great sandwich shop here in Macon called Sid's, and Sid's is just old fashioned. They're yelling at you from behind the counter, almost like
like New York or something.
Yeah,
New Jersey.
Yeah, and anyway, great sandwiches, old big fireplace in there. The furniture's old, the table, it's been there a long time. Right. Great sandwich shop though. Anyway, but I was in Sid's, and I'm sitting there. I had a meeting with a couple of people, and the judge walks in. Right, he walks in there, and he sees me sitting at the table, and he comes over to me. And he said, Todd, he goes, I just want to let you know, I appreciate everything Next Step does for the community and for the guys that we can allow to come there. He said, appreciate all the work you get. That makes you feel good. Because you don't know if do the judges even care. They got so many things going on.
That reminds me of something that, when I was first got in trouble and they sent me to do a rehabilitation place, I went to a couple other places. I'm not going to say the names, but a couple of places, and it was you're there for a year or two, you don't work, you don't do nothing, you kind of just, you work at their thrift shops and stuff. Right. But coming to Next Step, and after that 6 months, then you get to go to work. It's and
save money for yourself.
Exactly. And it's hard living with 15 to 20 other guys, but you become used to it. Everything is useful to whenever you're trying to do it. So it's easy to get used to it, but
it's more like 25 guys.
Yeah, 30 years. But you're only willing to talk about 10 of them.
Yeah. So everybody's coming and going. I know. So So it's a unique place. It really is. And the guys who come through there are just really great guys. I always say these guys come through Next Step with pasts, with prison records, with jail records, with broken relationships, lost jobs. And
there's been a couple of guys that come through that are really, really hardcore.
There have been.
But then when they get in and they see some of the women here, they're like, oh, hey, sweetie. It's funny to me because I'm like, that's not really who you are.
No. These guys are so they present themselves as tough guys.
Yeah,
but
they're not.
But they're, I asked this question the other day to the guys in class. We were a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about limiting beliefs. What are some limiting beliefs you have? And every single guy in class, and there's 15 of them, right? 15 guys in class that day. Every single one of them said, "I'm not worth it.
Wow.
I'm not worthy of success." Every single guy in that classroom looked at me and said, "I'm not worthy of anything good." And I'm like, now these are guys tattooed up, look tough, and you're just, but their mindset is, I'm nobody. I'm no good. I'm not worth putting any effort into. And I was like, wow, that
reminds me of the podcast, but the YouTube channel I let you see of that preacher.
Yeah.
And he was talking about, he said, if anybody in his church says I'm a sinner, everybody will stand up and say I'm a sinner. But he said, if are you a saint? Nobody will get up and say I'm a saint. He says, if you're running around talking about I'm a sinner your whole life, that's all you're ever going to be.
That's right.
Instead of saying I'm a saint, not a dead Catholic.
Right. Yeah. Not a saint, not a little statue. Yeah. That's right.
A saint is something that you can be, but you got to instill it in yourself that you are good enough.
Yeah. And the Bible calls Christians saints.
Yeah.
It's not, like you said, it's not dead prophets and, and
right.
Yeah. So, well, Lance, I will run out of time here because we're just limited on time, but I'm glad that you're home. Mm-hmm. I know you have some planning and some thinking and, some things we have to work through.
Oh, I'm ready just to come on back and just do it on my own, not rely on some family member to boost me through and, make everything great.
It's amazing how much you've grown in the last 3.5, 4 years.
Appreciate it.
Right. I've seen it. Right. I've seen the growth from where you were when you got to Next Step, where I shouldn't be here.
For a long time, for the first 6 months, not 6 months, first 3 months, I said I'm better than them.
Yeah.
I'm better than everybody here because I've got money. I come from money. But really, until I finally looked at myself and said, hey, I'm not better than the next man, it really made sense to me.
Yeah.
But Chris will. He'll run. That's what he's good at. He makes you feel like, you are okay, but if you're spoiled, I'm gonna let you know about it.
Yeah.
So for a long time I did that, and when I finally gave it to God and was real about it, it all started making sense.
That's good. Wow. Well, hey, if you've got any questions for Lance, and I hope you do, you can reach us at nextstepmen.org. That's our website. You can contact us through there, either email or there's the phone numbers on there as well. And
please no gator puns.
No, don't say anything about the Gators. Give it to him. Give it to him. Right? Yeah. And but we would love for you to subscribe to our channel here. Share this out. Share Lance's story. It's got to be an encouragement to somebody. I hope it's an encouragement to you. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. Have a wonderful day.